She's brain dead for 6 months, Admiral, the lead doctor said quietly in the ICU. There is no recovery. It's time to let her go. The SEAL Admiral stood frozen beside the ventilator, staring at his daughter like he was looking at a flag-draped coffin that still breathed. Then the doctor added, almost cold, if you don't sign today, the hospital will." Ava, the rookie nurse, had been silent the whole time until she stepped forward and said, "Sir, may I check something one last time?" The doctor snapped, "Nurse, don't give him false hope." Ava didn't argue. She leaned close to the Admiral's daughter and pressed her fingers behind the ear, a strange, precise pressure point. The monitor changed, a tiny spike. The doctor frowned. Artifact. Ava didn't even look up. She pressed again. Same spot, same pressure. The spike returned. This time, the Admiral saw it, too. Ava finally lifted her eyes to him and said quietly, "Call the neurologist." Now, before we begin, if you love intense military medical stories like this, take 2 seconds to comment where you're watching from and hit subscribe, because what happens in this ICU will make you rethink how many impossible cases were never truly checked. "She's been brain dead for 6 months, Admiral," the lead doctor said quietly, like he was reading weather. "There is no recovery. It's time to let her go." The ICU room was too clean, too bright, too calm for a sentence that heavy. Machines hissed and clicked. A ventilator pushed air into a chest that rose and fell like it still belonged to someone alive. The Admiral stood beside the bed in his dress uniform, hands clasped behind his back, posture locked in place like he was at a funeral that refused to end. His daughter lay motionless, hair brushed, skin warm, lips slightly parted. She didn't look like death. She looked like sleep, and that was the cruelest part. The doctor didn't stop there. He leaned closer, voice dropping even colder. "If you don't sign today, the hospital will." The words hit like a slap. A couple of specialists in the corner avoided eye contact. The neurologic nurse beside the door stared at the floor. Everyone in the room knew what this was. Not just medicine, but policy, liability, time slots, paperwork. The Admiral's jaw tightened. He didn't cry. He didn't yell. He just stared at the ventilator tubing as if he could will it to change the truth. For a moment, it looked like even a man who commanded war zones was about to lose to a pen. Ava stood at the back with a clipboard pressed against her ribs, almost invisible in pale scrubs. Blonde hair tied back, face drawn from long shifts, eyes steady in a way rookies weren't supposed to be. She had been assigned to comfort care, which in this hospital basically meant keep the family calm while the system does what it came to do. Nobody asked Ava what she thought. Nobody wanted what a rookie nurse thought, but she'd been watching the monitors the entire time, watching tiny patterns most people never notice because they assume they're meaningless. And when the doctor pushed the paperwork toward the Admiral, Ava took one quiet step forward. "Sir," she said gently, not to the doctor, but to the Admiral. "May I check something?" One last time. The lead doctor snapped his head toward her like she'd insulted him. "Nurse, don't give him false hope." His tone wasn't just annoyed. It was territorial, like Ava had stepped onto sacred ground. The Admiral didn't move, but his eyes flicked toward Ava, and for the first time in the room, someone looked at her like she mattered. Ava didn't argue. She didn't plead. She simply walked to the bedside like she belonged there. She leaned close to the Admiral's daughter, very careful not to disturb the lines, and pressed her fingers behind the ear. 2 fingertips, precise placement, a strange pressure point that didn't look like medicine at all. It looked like something you'd do in the dark with no equipment and no time. The monitor changed. Not dramatically, not Hollywood. Just a tiny spike, small enough that a confident doctor could dismiss it, but sharp enough that a trained eye couldn't ignore it. The lead doctor narrowed his eyes. "Artifact," he said immediately, like he'd been waiting for the excuse. Ava didn't even look up. She pressed again. Same spot. Same pressure. The spike returned. This time, the Admiral saw it, too. He leaned forward, the first break in his rigid posture, eyes locked on the screen like it was a heartbeat from the dead. The doctor stepped toward the monitor, irritated now, as if the machine had betrayed him. "It's electrical noise," he muttered. "A glitch, she's been declared. This doesn't change anything." Ava finally lifted her eyes, not at the doctor, but at the Admiral. Her voice stayed low, respectful, and deadly serious. "Call the neurologist now." The room held its breath. Because in that moment, the rookie nurse wasn't asking. She was warning. The lead doctor's face hardened. "Absolutely not," he said. You are not going to derail months of confirmed diagnosis because you pressed a pressure point and saw a blip. He turned to the Admiral with the practiced calm of someone who knew how to control a grieving parent. Sir, you've been through this. Every test has been done. Every specialist has confirmed it. What you're seeing is not your daughter coming back. It's a machine reacting to touch. The Admiral stared at the doctor for a long moment. His eyes were glassy, but his voice was controlled. You're telling me to kill my daughter, he said quietly. The doctor didn't flinch. I'm telling you, she's already gone. Ava shifted her weight slightly, and a small detail betrayed her. Her hands were perfectly still. No fidgeting, no shaking, no nervous rookie energy. She looked at the lead doctor and spoke with the calm of someone who had seen real death up close. Doctor, she said, if you're right, then I'm wrong, and I'll accept whatever discipline you want. The doctor scoffed. This isn't about you. Ava nodded once. No, it's about the fact that her body just responded twice to a targeted stimulus, and brain-dead patients don't do that. The words landed like a hammer. One of the specialists in the corner blinked hard, suddenly uncomfortable. The lead doctor's jaw tightened. You are dangerously out of your depth. Ava's eyes didn't change, then let the neurologist prove it. The Admiral looked from the doctor to Ava, and something in his expression shifted. Not hope, not yet. Something older, something like instinct, the kind that keeps you alive when everyone else is sure you're done. He stepped closer to the bed, staring at his daughter's face, searching for anything at all, that said she was still in there. Then he looked at Ava again. What did you just do? He asked. Ava hesitated for half a second, like she almost didn't want to answer. A field check, she said softly. Something I learned a long time ago. The lead doctor laughed, sharp and humorless. Field check? This is Walter Reed. Not a battlefield. Ava didn't react to the insult. She simply reached for the call button on the wall, pressed it once, and when the ICU desk answered, she spoke clearly. This is Nurse Ava in ICU 3. I need neurology at bedside now. The lead doctor stepped forward, furious. Cancel that. Ava didn't look at him. She kept her eyes on the Admiral. And the Admiral, still in uniform, still rigid, still breaking inside, did something that made the entire room freeze. He placed his hand on the paperwork, then slowly pushed it away, and in a voice so quiet it made the doctor lean in to hear it, the Admiral said, Get the neurologist, and nobody touches the cord until I hear what she has to say. The lead doctor's face tightened like he'd just been slapped in public. He didn't yell. He didn't have to. The humiliation sat in the room like a chemical smell. Admiral, he said, forcing calm back into his voice. I understand grief makes people desperate, but this is not how we do medicine. The Admiral didn't blink. This is exactly how you do medicine, he answered quietly. When you're more afraid of being wrong than you are of killing a living patient. That sentence landed hard. One of the residents near the door swallowed and looked away. Ava stood still, hands folded at her waist like she'd already accepted the consequences, because she had. 2 minutes later, the ICU doors opened, and a woman in navy scrubs walked in fast. Early 40s, hair tied tight, eyes sharp, the kind of neurologist who looked like she slept in the hospital. She didn't greet anyone. She went straight to the bed and looked at the monitor, then at the Admiral, and then at the lead doctor. You called for ENT neuro, she said. What happened? The lead doctor spoke first too quickly. Nothing happened. A nurse pressed behind the patient's ear and created a monitor artifact. The family is clinging. Ava didn't defend herself. She simply stepped forward and said, I can reproduce it twice. The neurologist's eyes flicked to Ava's badge. Rookie. Her expression didn't change, but her voice softened slightly. Show me. Ava leaned in again, fingertips finding the exact spot behind the ear like she'd marked it with a compass. She pressed. The monitor gave the same tiny spike. Small but clean. The neurologist didn't react. She didn't gasp. She didn't smile. She only leaned closer and watched the waveform like her life depended on it. Again, she said. Ava pressed again. Same spike. The neurologist straightened slowly, and for the first time the lead doctor looked uncertain. That's still not proof. He said brain-dead patients can show spinal reflexes, peripheral responses. The neurologist cut him off without looking at him. That wasn't a spinal reflex. She turned to Ava. What exactly are you stimulating? Ava hesitated, then answered carefully. A cranial nerve response point. It's used to test for hidden brainstem activity in field triage when you don't have imaging. The lead doctor scoffed. Field triage. This is a 6-month confirmed case. The neurologist finally looked at him and her eyes were ice. Then it should be easy to prove her dead again, she said. The Admiral stood with his hands gripping the bed rail so hard his knuckles were white. He didn't beg. He didn't plead. He didn't want pity. Doctor, he said to the neurologist, I don't need miracles. I need truth. The neurologist nodded once. Then we do this properly. She said, full brainstem exam. No shortcuts. The lead doctor tried to regain control. We've done them multiple times. The neurologist didn't even slow down. Then you won't mind doing one more. She turned to the ICU nurse. Get respiratory in here. I want apnea testing prepped. Get labs and call radiology. Stat EG and CTA if possible. The room shifted. The energy changed. Suddenly, this wasn't comfort care anymore. This was a case again. A real case. The kind of case people didn't want because if Ava was right, the hospital had been wrong for 6 months. As the team moved, the lead doctor pulled Ava aside near the sink, keeping his voice low so the Admiral couldn't hear. You have no idea what you've done. He hissed. If you're wrong, you've just tortured a father who's already dying inside. Ava looked at him calmly. And if I'm right, she said, you've been signing death paperwork on a living person. The doctor's face flushed. This is above your pay grade. Ava didn't flinch. So is ending someone's life, she replied. That shut him up, not because he agreed, because he couldn't argue with it without sounding like the villain he was starting to become. The neurologist began the exam. She spoke out loud, clinical, precise, almost cold, because that's how you survive when the stakes are unbearable. Pupillary response? Minimal choreal reflex. She paused. Hold still. She checked again. The lead doctor watched with crossed arms, trying to look confident. The Admiral watched like a man staring at a bomb timer. Ava watched the neurologist's hands, not the patient, because she knew the moment truth arrived, it would arrive in the doctor's face first. Gag reflex. The neurologist tried again, firmer. Another pause. The resident shifted uncomfortably. The neurologist's voice lowered. There is response, she said. The room went silent. The lead doctor laughed once, nervous, disbelieving. That's impossible. The neurologist didn't look up. Then explain it, she said. The Admiral's breath caught. His eyes filled, but he didn't let the tears fall. He'd been strong for 6 months. He could be strong for 10 more seconds. Then something happened that nobody expected. The Admiral's daughter's heart rate climbed. Not a little. It climbed like her body was waking up angry. The ventilator alarm chirped. The resident stepped back. She's reacting. The neurologist said sharply. Sedation. The ICU nurse shook her head. None. She hasn't been sedated in months. The lead doctor's face went pale. That wasn't supposed to happen. Brain-dead bodies don't react. They don't get stressed. They don't fight. The Admiral leaned closer, voice cracking for the first time. Sweetheart, he whispered. And then, so small it could have been imagined. Her fingers twitched. The lead doctor stepped forward like he needed to stop the moment from becoming real. That's a reflex, he snapped. Spell, meaningless. Ava turned her head slightly and looked at him. Spell reflexes don't track command tone, she said. The lead doctor's eyes flashed. You are not a neurologist. Ava nodded once. No, she said. I'm just the only one here who wasn't too proud to touch the truth. The neurologist raised a hand, cutting off both of them. Enough, she said. I want imaging now. She looked at the Admiral. Sir, I'm not promising recovery, she said carefully. But I am telling you, the diagnosis of brain death is no longer valid. The Admiral's knees nearly buckled. He grabbed the bed rail and held himself upright like he was back on a ship in rough water. So, she's in there, he whispered. The neurologist's eyes softened by 1/2 degree. There is something, she said. And it's not nothing. The hospital reacted the way institutions always react when they realize they might have committed a crime with paperwork. Suddenly, administrators appeared. A risk management woman in a blazer walked into the ICU like she owned the oxygen. The lead doctor's phone started buzzing non-stop. A supervisor pulled the neurologist into the hallway for a whispered conversation that looked more like pressure than collaboration. Ava caught fragments. Liability, public chain of care, 6 months, family consent. The Admiral stood by the bed like a statue, staring at his daughter's face, refusing to be moved. When the neurologist came back in, her jaw was tight. They want to transfer her, she said quietly, to a civilian neuro facility to get her out of this building. Ava's stomach dropped. She understood instantly. If the patient left, the hospital could bury the mistake. The Admiral's voice went cold. No, he said. You're not moving her until I have answers. The neurologist looked at him. Admiral, she said, if you want her to live, we may need to move fast. Ava stepped forward. Or, she said, we treat the real cause right here before someone makes her disappear into paperwork. The lead doctor spun toward her. What real cause? He snapped. Ava looked at the Admiral's daughter, then at the neurologist. Locked in, she said quietly. Or a brainstem compression that mimics brain death. I've seen it once. The neurologist's eyes narrowed. Where? Ava didn't answer. Not yet. She couldn't because if she said Afghanistan, everything would change. The Admiral stared at Ava like he was seeing her for the first time. Nurse, he said slowly. How do you know what this looks like? Ava swallowed, and for the first time since this began, her calm wavered. Because, she whispered, I've watched a soldier come back from dead while everyone else was already writing the report. And right then, the Admiral's daughter's eyelids fluttered once, like a door trying to open from the inside. Quick question. If you've ever had a moment where you knew something was wrong, but everyone told you to stay quiet, comments speak up below. Because what Ava does next is going to expose the hospital's biggest secret. The flutter of her eyelids should have been impossible. And yet, it happened again. So small it looked like a trick of the ICU lights, but too deliberate to ignore. The neurologist leaned in fast, shining her pen light, watching for tracking. The lead doctor stood stiff at the foot of the bed, jaw clenched, like his entire career was trying to hold the room together by force. The Admiral didn't move. He didn't even breathe. He stared at his daughter's face like he was afraid blinking would erase her. Ava stayed close to the head of the bed, calm in a way that didn't feel like confidence. It felt like discipline. The neurologist whispered, if this is locked in, she's been trapped for 6 months. The Admiral's voice came out. Then someone has been burying my daughter alive. In the hallway, the hospital administrator arrived with 2 suits behind her. Risk management and legal. They didn't rush. They didn't panic. That was the scariest part. They walked like this was paperwork, not a human life. Admiral, the administrator said gently, we understand you're emotional, but the safest course is immediate transfer. The Admiral turned his head slowly. His eyes were calm but lethal. You're not moving her, he said. Not until I hear the words, we were wrong, out loud. The lead doctor jumped in like a shield. Sir, nobody is saying we were wrong. We are saying there are irregularities that require outside evaluation. Ava watched the suits carefully. They weren't looking at the patient. They were looking at the Admiral, measuring him, like if he broke down, they could win. But the Admiral didn't break down. He leaned in close to the administrator and said, quiet as a knife. If you try to move her without my consent, I will treat this as an unlawful act against my family. The neurologist took control again because she was the only one in the building who still looked like a doctor instead of a politician. I'm ordering an immediate CTA and EEG, she said. And I want an MRI if we can get one. The lead doctor snapped. We've done imaging. It was conclusive. The neurologist's eyes flicked to him. Conclusive for what you wanted it to be, she said. Then she looked at Ava. You said you've seen this before. Ava hesitated. The room felt too small, too many eyes, too much authority. But the Admiral was watching her now with something else mixed into his grief. Recognition. Tell her, he said. Whatever it is, tell her. Ava nodded once. Afghanistan, she said quietly. Field hospital. A Marine took a blast. Everyone called it brain death. No reflexes, no response. I noticed his heart rate changed when his mother spoke to him on a phone. He was trapped, locked in. He lived. The neurologist's face hardened with urgency. Then we treat this like time is oxygen, she said. The CT scan happened fast, but the waiting felt endless. The Admiral stood in the imaging corridor with his hands clasped behind his back like he was back on a deck during inspection, forcing his body to stay steady while his mind screamed. Ava stood a few feet away, not crowding him, not performing sympathy, just present. The lead doctor hovered near the door, whispering into his phone, probably calling someone to save him. When the neurologist finally came back with the preliminary read, her expression was different, less skeptical, more disturbed. "There's pressure," she said. "Not catastrophic, but enough. Brain stem area. It could mimic everything." The lead doctor scoffed immediately. "Pressure doesn't equal consciousness." The neurologist looked at him. "It equals possibility," she said. The Admiral stepped forward. "What do we do?" The neurologist held his gaze. "We stop calling her dead," she said. "And we start treating her like she's fighting." Back in the ICU, the neurologist began issuing orders that sounded like war. Meds adjusted, vent settings refined, a stimulation protocol initiated. Every nurse in the bay moved faster. Even the ones who'd been whispering, "Poor Admiral," an hour ago now looked shaken, like they were realizing. They'd been standing next to a living person, while talking about unplugging her. Ava stayed near the head of the bed, monitoring the tiny changes no one else noticed. The Admiral leaned close to his daughter's ear. His voice was quiet, not dramatic, just raw. "If you can hear me, I'm here," he whispered. "I'm not leaving you." The lead doctor stood in the corner with his arms folded, watching the neurologist run the show like it was an insult. Then Ava did something that made him snap. She leaned in and pressed behind the ear again. Same spot. The monitor spiked, but this time her daughter's throat made a faint sound. Not a cough, not a reflex. A sound like a person trying to speak through a locked door. The neurologist froze. The ICU nurse froze. The resident's eyes widened. The lead doctor laughed again, sharp and ugly. "Coincidence?" he said, a ventilator noise. Ava didn't look at him. She looked at the neurologist. "Watch your eyes," she said softly. The neurologist leaned in. Ava pressed again. The Admiral's daughter's eyelids fluttered twice. Then, slowly, her pupils shifted. Not random, not drifting. They moved toward Ava, toward the sound of her voice. The neurologist whispered, "That's tracking." The Admiral's face cracked, his mouth open, but no words came out. 6 months of grief, 6 months of funeral-level pain, and suddenly his daughter's eyes were following movement. The lead doctor's face went white. "That's not possible," he whispered. But it was. It was right there. The suits came back immediately like sharks smelling blood in the water. Risk management spoke first. "We need to pause all non-standard procedures." The neurologist snapped. "This isn't non-standard. This is a patient showing signs of awareness." Legal added, "We need to protect the hospital." The Admiral turned to them with a calm that felt terrifying. "Protect her," he said. "Not yourselves." The administrator tried again. "Admiral, we want the best outcome, but you must understand. This is sensitive." The Admiral stepped forward until they all backed up instinctively. "Sensitive?" he said. "My daughter was labeled brain dead for 6 months. You tried to force me to sign her death. That's not sensitive. That's criminal." The lead doctor tried to interject, but the neurologist cut him off. "I want the original brain death documentation," she said. "Every test, every name, every timestamp." The lead doctor's throat tightened. He didn't answer fast enough. And in that silence, Ava realized something cold. Someone had falsified the record. Ava didn't say it out loud. She didn't need to. The neurologist saw it, too. The way the lead doctor's eyes avoided hers. The way the administrator suddenly started talking about process instead of care. Ava leaned closer to the Admiral, voice low. "Sir," she whispered. "They're not just wrong, they're scared." The Admiral's eyes stayed on his daughter, but his voice was still. "Good," he said. "They should be." The neurologist pulled Ava aside for half a second near the med cart. "That pressure point," she whispered. "That's not nursing school." Ava swallowed. "No," she admitted. "It's military." The neurologist stared at her. "What were you?" Ava's face stayed calm, but her eyes sharpened. "A medic," she said. "The kind they erase." The neurologist's expression changed instantly. Not admiration, not fear, respect. The kind you only give to someone who survived things you can't imagine. Then the Admiral's daughter did something that made the entire ICU stop. Her fingers moved. Not a twitch, not a reflex, she squeezed, and the person she squeezed was Ava. The Admiral's voice broke into a whisper. "She chose you," he said, stunned. Ava stared down at the hand, gripping her fingers, and realized the next move would decide whether this girl lived or whether the hospital made her disappear for good. Ava didn't pull her hand away. She just let the Admiral's daughter hold on. Because that grip wasn't strength. It was proof. The kind of proof that makes an entire hospital story collapse in real time. The Admiral stepped closer, eyes locked on his daughter's fingers like he was watching a miracle form out of thin air. The neurologist leaned in, voice tight and urgent. "Can you do that again?" she asked softly. Ava lowered her head, calm as ever. She whispered to the girl. "If you can hear me, squeeze once for yes." The ICU was so quiet you could hear the ventilator cycle. 1 second, 2, then the fingers squeezed again. Not a spasm, not random. A deliberate answer. The Admiral's face didn't crumple. His whole body went rigid, like his brain couldn't decide whether to cry or fight. And across the room, the lead doctor took one slow step backward, like he was trying to escape the moment before it became evidence. The neurologist turned and snapped orders with the speed of someone who finally understood the stakes. "Get me a full EEG, repeat brainstem reflex testing, and I want a neuro-ICU consult now," she said. "And nobody touches this patient without my clearance." The hospital administrator appeared in the doorway again, flanked by legal, already holding a clipboard like it was a weapon. "We need to suspend this," she said, forcing a calm smile. "We can't allow unapproved stimulation." The Admiral didn't raise his voice. He didn't have to. "If anyone tries to remove her from this room," he said, "I will call the base commander and the inspector general before you finish your next sentence." The suits froze. The neurologist didn't even look at them. She looked at Ava. "That technique behind the ear," she said quietly. "Tell me exactly what it is." Ava hesitated for half a breath. Then she said, "A field method used when we suspected someone was trapped but unresponsive. It triggers a reaction in a specific nerve pathway." The neurologist's eyes narrowed. "You've done this before." Ava's voice was almost flat. "Yes." Within minutes, the ICU turned into a controlled storm. A respiratory therapist adjusted the ventilator. A nurse drew labs with shaking hands. A resident sprinted for equipment. And through all of it, the Admiral stayed beside the bed. In one hand, holding his daughter's wrist like he was afraid the hospital would steal her heartbeat the moment he let go. The lead doctor tried to regain control by speaking louder, using authority like a shield. "This changes nothing," he insisted. A reflexive grip can occur in the neurologist cut him off with a stare that could have stopped a helicopter. "I watch her track," she said. "I watched her respond to a command. If you say reflex one more time, I'm reporting you myself." The lead doctor's mouth opened, then shut. He looked at Ava, and for the first time, there was something in his expression that wasn't arrogance. It was fear. Because Ava wasn't just a nurse who got lucky. She was a problem he couldn't control. The first EEG results came back and the neurologist didn't even sit down to read them. She stood at the monitor and jaw tightening as the line scrolled. Then she turned to the Admiral. "She is not brain dead," she said. The words hit the room like a shock wave. The Admiral blinked hard. "Say it again," he whispered. The neurologist didn't soften it. "She is not brain dead. She has awareness. It's limited, but it's there." The Admiral's knees almost buckled, and Ava stepped in without thinking, steadying him by the elbow. The Admiral grabbed the side rail instead, grounding himself. His voice came out low and shaking. 6 months, he said. For 6 months, you let me mourn her while she was still in there." The lead doctor's face drained of color. "Admiral," the Admiral cut him off, eyes like steel. "Don't," he said. "Not one word until I see every single signature on the paperwork that tried to kill my daughter." Then the real twist arrived. The neurologist demanded the original brain death packet, and the administrator produced it like she'd been waiting. Neat, clean, too clean. Ava stood behind the neurologist's shoulder as she flipped through pages, and her eyes caught something that made her stomach drop. The timestamp on the second confirmatory exam didn't match the ICU nurse notes. The sedation log showed medication that shouldn't have been given before reflex testing, and the name of the second attending physician belonged to a doctor who hadn't been on shift that day. The neurologist looked up slowly. "This is falsified," she said. The administrator's smile cracked. "That's a serious accusation." The neurologist didn't blink. "It's not an accusation," she said. "It's a fact." The lead doctor backed away again, and Ava saw it clearly now. This wasn't incompetence. Why? This was a cover-up. Someone had wanted the Admiral's daughter declared dead. Not medically, Officially. The Admiral didn't explode. That would have been easy. Instead, he went terrifyingly calm. He pulled out his phone, walked 2 steps away, and made one call. "This is Admiral Hart," he said into the receiver. "I need NCIS and the base commander at this hospital now." He ended the call and turned back to the room. "No one leaves," he said. "No one deletes anything. No one touches a chart." The administrator stammered something about protocol, but the Admiral's stare shut her down. Ava looked at the girl in the bed, and for the first time, she saw the smallest change in her face. Tears. Not dramatic, not movie style, just one thin line sliding from the corner of her eye, like her body finally had permission to be human again. Ia leaned in close. "You're safe," she whispered.